Today's story is titled She Ordered the Wrong Coffee and Got a Lifetime Promise. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The morning rain had not stopped when Lily Tran wiped the counter of the small coffee shop in downtown Seattle. Steam rose from the espresso machine, mingling with the faint scent of roasted beans and vanilla syrup. She was on her third shift that week, running on too little sleep and too many dreams. Her sneakers were damp, her apron smelled faintly of mocha, and yet she smiled at every customer as if her life depended on it. Maybe it did. Her rent was overdue, her tuition notice sat unopened in her bag, and the only thing keeping her from giving up was a sketchbook filled with designs she hoped would one day hang in a real studio. At exactly 8:17 a.m., a man walked in, tall, composed, the kind of presence that changed the temperature of the room without saying a word. He wore a tailored gray suit that probably cost more than her entire year's wages. He checked his watch, muttered something under his breath, and stepped toward the counter. "One espresso, no sugar," he said, his tone clipped but polite. Lily nodded quickly, punching the order into the register. But the morning rush blurred together orders shouted, cups stacked, milk frothing, and without realizing it, she grabbed the wrong cup from the counter, a caramel latte with a swirl of cream, and slid it toward him. "Here you go," she said, still catching her breath. The man paused, looked at the cup, then at her. "This is not an espresso," he said slowly. Lily's heart sank. "Oh my gosh, I am so sorry, but he lifted the cup before she could finish, studying the delicate foam heart on top. "That is fine," he murmured, almost to himself. "Maybe I needed a little sweetness today." He took a sip, and something softened in his expression, a small, private smile breaking through the stoic calm. For a second, Lily forgot how to breathe. She did not know this man, but there was something magnetic about the way he carried his silence, like someone used to being obeyed, yet oddly tired of it. "Do I know you?" she blurted without thinking. He shook his head, amused. "Not yet." Before she could reply, his phone buzzed with an urgent call. "Yes, Mother, I know. I will handle it," he said, his voice low but strained. Then he sighed, glanced back at Lily, and asked suddenly, "How fast can you pretend to be my fiancé for 1 week?" Lily blinked, stunned. "I am sorry, what?" He set the cup down, reached into his jacket, and pulled out a sleek black card embossed with gold letters, Ethan Cole, CEO, Cole Industries. "You heard me," he said evenly. "A public engagement, strictly professional. I will pay well. You just have to look convincing." The rain tapped harder against the windows as the espresso machine hissed like a whispering witness. Lily stared at him, speechless, half expecting a camera crew to jump out shouting prank. "Why me?" she managed to ask. Ethan looked at her for a long second, eyes unreadable. "Because you are the first person today who looked at me like I am human." She wanted to laugh, but the sincerity in his voice disarmed her. "You want me to fake an engagement with you?" "For 1 week," he repeated, calm as ever. "Starting tonight." She swallowed, glancing around the quiet shop, then back at him. The man with the wrong coffee. The billionaire with a secret. And maybe, just maybe, the beginning of a promise that would change everything. The next day felt unreal. Lily woke up in her small apartment, the sound of rain dripping from the old fire escape outside. On her counter sat a single white cup, the one the stranger had left behind. Ethan Cole. The name on the card had kept her awake all night. She kept replaying his voice in her mind, calm, confident, and slightly broken. A fake engagement. 1 week. $20,000. It was insane. And yet, part of her wondered if this was the kind of chance that only came once in a lifetime. By noon, she was standing in front of the glass tower of Cole Industries, her reflection small against the wall of steel and sky. Inside, everything gleamed: marble floors, the smell of expensive cologne, the rhythm of heels clicking down endless corridors. A receptionist greeted her politely, and moments later, an assistant led her to the top floor. When the elevator doors opened, Ethan was there, leaning over a desk full of files. He looked different in daylight, less like a mystery, more like a man carrying too much weight. "You came," he said simply. Lily crossed her arms. "I am still not sure why." Ethan gestured for her to sit. "Because you need a break from struggling, and I need a fiancé who looks like she believes in me." He slid a contract across the table. The paper was thick, embossed with gold edges. "These are the terms. 7 days, for public events, no physical expectations, no personal interference, and complete confidentiality. Payment in full upon completion." She stared at the document. It sounded more like a business merger than a relationship. "You have done this before?" she asked. "No," he said, his jaw tightening. "But I have been betrayed before." There was something in his tone that made her chest ache. "Why me?" she asked again. "Because you did not flinch when I said I was wrong," he said. "Everyone else does." For a long moment, she studied him. He looked powerful, yes, but also deeply tired. The kind of tired that came from losing faith in people. Slowly, she picked up the pen. 1 week, she murmured. 1 week, he confirmed. They both signed. The pen clicked shut like a gavel striking fate. A knock sounded, and his assistant, a sharp woman in a navy suit, entered carrying several garment bags. "This is Ava," Ethan said. "She will prepare you for tonight's event." Ava smiled faintly. "Miss Tran, welcome to the role of a lifetime." Before Lily could reply, she was swept into a whirlwind of fabric, shoes, and etiquette lessons. In a private dressing room overlooking the city, Ava zipped her into a midnight blue gown. The fabric shimmered like quiet waves under moonlight. "Remember," Ava said softly, "you do not have to act rich. Just act like you belong." Hours later, the elevator doors opened again, and Ethan waited, dressed in a black suit that fit him like shadow and purpose. His gaze lingered a little too long when he saw her. "You look believable," he said, a ghost of a smile tugging at his mouth. "Is that a compliment?" she teased. "It is an observation," he replied. The car ride to the event was silent except for the hum of the city outside. Lily stared at the raindrops racing across the window, her pulse steady but curious. What kind of man risked his reputation on a stranger? When they arrived at the hotel ballroom, cameras flashed instantly. Ethan stepped out first, extending his hand. "Ready?" he asked. "Not even close," she whispered, taking it anyway. The lights were blinding. Voices called their names. Reporters shouted questions. Ethan leaned close enough for her to feel his breath. "Just smile and stay near me." "That is the easy part," she said with a nervous laugh. As they walked across the red carpet, the world believed in their illusion. But somewhere between the bright lights and the champagne, Lily felt something shift inside her, a strange awareness that this might not be just an act after all. And when Ethan looked down at her, for a brief second, his expression softened in a way that felt dangerously real. The ballroom shimmered with gold light and low music. Chandeliers hung like constellations above, and every table glowed with crystal glasses and white roses. Lily followed Ethan through the crowd, smiling until her cheeks hurt. Every person they met looked powerful, elegant, rehearsed. She felt like a misplaced note in a perfect song. Still, she played her part. When people greeted Ethan, she placed her hand on his arm, nodding politely. At one point, an older woman in pearls leaned close and whispered, "You are a lucky girl." Lily smiled but said nothing. The truth was, luck had nothing to do with it. The first hour passed in a blur of small talk and champagne. Ethan stayed composed, answering every question with charm. Yet every so often, his gaze drifted to her, as if grounding himself in her presence. She did not understand it, but each glance made her heart race faster. When the speeches began, she exhaled, trying to blend into the glittering silence. The host, a man with a booming voice, stepped up to the microphone. Tonight, he announced, we celebrate innovation, partnership, and faith in leadership. And no one embodies those values better than Mr. Ethan Cole. The room erupted in applause. Ethan rose, buttoned his jacket, and walked to the stage. His confidence filled the space like quiet thunder. Lily watched him speak, the cadence of his voice steady, persuasive. For the first time, she saw him not as the man who had offered her a strange deal, but as someone who had built an empire from sheer will. Yet even from the stage, his eyes found her in the crowd. For a heartbeat, it felt like he was talking to her alone. When he finished, the audience stood in ovation. Cameras flashed. As he stepped down, a journalist rushed forward with a microphone. "Mr. Cole, rumors say your engagement took everyone by surprise. Care to tell us how you met?" Ethan hesitated, and Lily's pulse skipped. This was not in the contract. He smiled, then turned to her. "She gave me the wrong coffee," he said simply. Laughter rippled through the crowd. "And that mistake," he continued, "turned out to be the best decision of my life." Lily froze, her throat dry. It sounded too real, too warm. The journalist grinned. "A love story brewed over caffeine?" "Something like that," Ethan replied, slipping an arm around her. The cameras clicked wildly, catching the easy way she leaned into him, the sparkle in his eyes. For the rest of the night, they danced through conversations, both playing their parts with dangerous perfection. When the event finally ended, the city was quiet again. In the car, silence stretched between them, heavy but not cold. "You handled that well," Ethan said finally. "You are better at lying than I expected." "Maybe I was telling the truth," she said softly. He looked at her, searching her face for a trace of jest, but there was none. Back at his penthouse, she stepped into the marble foyer, the view of the city sprawling below like a galaxy. "You live here?" she asked, half in awe. "I work here, mostly," he answered. "Sleeping feels optional these days." He poured 2 glasses of water and handed her one. "Thank you," she said. "For trusting me with this." "Trust," he repeated, as if testing the word on his tongue. "That is rare for me." For a while, they stood near the window, watching lightning flicker far beyond the skyline. "Do you ever stop?" she asked quietly. "Stop what?" "Trying to prove something to everyone." He turned to her, his expression unreadable. "Do you?" She smiled faintly. "I am not proving anything. I am just surviving." Their eyes met in the reflection of the glass, 2 people from different worlds bound by one impossible contract. Somewhere deep down, Lily felt that the line between pretend and real had already begun to blur. And maybe, just maybe, he felt it too. By the 3rd day of their agreement, Lily had almost memorized Ethan's routine. He woke before sunrise, read reports while drinking black coffee, and spoke to his team through glass walls as if the city itself were listening. She spent her mornings learning to navigate his world press conferences, interviews, charity luncheons. Each event demanded a smile, a dress, and a new reason to pretend she belonged. Yet, somewhere between the photo flashes and rehearsed compliments, the pretending began to feel less like acting and more like breathing beside him. That morning, Ethan's mother, Margaret Cole, invited them to brunch at her country estate. The mansion was surrounded by acres of quiet hills, far from the noise of Seattle. As the car pulled through the iron gates, Lily whispered, "This place looks like a movie." Ethan glanced at her, half amused. "My mother prefers the kind of drama that comes with real estate." When they entered, Margaret stood at the top of the staircase, elegant in a cream-colored dress, her gaze sharp and assessing. "So this is the girl who changed your mind about marriage," she said. Her tone was polite, but her eyes were searching. "It is nice to meet you, Mrs. Cole," Lily said, forcing confidence. "Please, call me Margaret," the woman replied smoothly. "Tell me, how did you two meet?" Lily smiled, trying to recall the story Ethan had told the press. "I gave him the wrong coffee," she said lightly. Margaret's lips curved. "And he decided to keep you?" Interesting business strategy. Lunch was exquisite and painfully quiet. Margaret asked questions that felt like tests. "What are your parents' professions? Do you plan to continue working?" Ethan tried to deflect, but Lily answered honestly. "My mother was a teacher. She passed away 2 years ago. My father lives in Oregon, retired. I still work at the coffee shop part-time." The table fell silent. Margaret set down her fork. "A barista," she repeated. "How refreshing." Ethan's voice cut through the tension. "Mother, Lily is not defined by her job." Margaret gave a thin smile. "Of course. But reputation matters, darling. Especially when your board expects stability." Lily stared down at her plate, embarrassed. Ethan's hand brushed hers under the table, a silent reassurance. After lunch, Margaret called Ethan aside. Lily stepped into the garden, breathing in the cold air. Through the glass doors, she could see mother and son arguing quietly. When Ethan returned, his jaw was tense. "What did she say?" Lily asked softly. "That I am reckless," he muttered. "That I should stop chasing illusions." "And am I one of those illusions?" she asked. He looked at her for a long moment. "You were supposed to be." The car ride back to the city was wordless. That night, Ethan retreated into his office, leaving Lily alone in the penthouse. She wandered through the vast rooms, stopping by a shelf filled with framed photographs. One caught her eye, a young Ethan beside a man with the same piercing eyes. "My father," Ethan said quietly behind her. She jumped slightly, not realizing he had returned. "He died when I was 23. Heart attack." His voice lowered. "He built this company from nothing. My mother thinks the only way to honor him is to keep building, even if it kills me too." Lily turned to face him. "Maybe your father would have wanted you to live, not just work." For the first time, Ethan's expression cracked. "You talk like you know him." "No," she said softly. "But I know what loss looks like." A silence settled between them, deep and fragile. Then, almost without thinking, Ethan reached for the silver coffee cup that sat on his desk, the same one from the day they met. He poured 2 cups, handed her one, and said, "If this is a performance, it is the most real one I have ever had." Lily smiled faintly. "Then maybe it is time you stopped pretending." The rain began to fall again outside, tapping against the glass like a steady heartbeat. For a brief moment, they simply stood there, two strangers bound by a contract that was slowly becoming something dangerously close to truth. The next evening brought another storm and another event. This time, it was a charity gala hosted in one of Seattle's tallest hotels. From the ballroom balcony, the skyline shimmered with rain-soaked lights. Lily adjusted the bracelet on her wrist, the one Ava had insisted she wear. She could feel the weight of every glance as she stepped beside Ethan. "You look nervous," he said quietly, fastening his cufflinks. "I am," she admitted. "I do not belong here." "Neither do I," he said with a faint smile. "I just pay the rent." His attempt at humor made her laugh, and the sound seemed to surprise them both. When they entered the hall, applause greeted Ethan. He was the man of the night, the guest everyone wanted to impress. Lily stayed close, her hand lightly resting on his arm, the way Ava had taught her. Cameras followed their every move, capturing the image of a perfect couple. As the evening progressed, Lily found herself slipping into her role with unexpected ease. When a journalist asked about their engagement, she smiled and said, "It happened when I was not looking for it." The best things often do. The crowd melted with admiration. Ethan's gaze lingered on her with something unspoken, something softer than gratitude. Later, during dinner, a guest spilled wine near the table of investors. Lily quickly grabbed a napkin, kneeling to help clean the mess before anyone else could react. The small act disarmed the tension, and laughter replaced awkward silence. Ethan watched her, an unreadable expression on his face. After the meal, the master of ceremonies announced an open-floor Q&A with Ethan about the company's upcoming foundation project. A man from the audience stood up. "Mr. Cole, many believe your sudden engagement is a publicity stunt. How can we trust your judgment?" The room fell silent. Ethan's jaw tightened. Before he could respond, Lily spoke. "Trust is not built by words," she said calmly. "It is built by showing up every day, even when no one believes in you." "I have seen him do that." Murmurs spread across the tables. Ethan looked at her, surprised. She had defended him without hesitation, and not as part of an act. When the Q&A ended, applause erupted again, genuine and loud. The night wound down slowly, the guests beginning to leave. Outside, rain streaked the glass walls in silver threads. Ethan found her near the balcony, her eyes tracing the lights below. "You were incredible," he said quietly. "I only told the truth," she replied. He stepped closer. "That is what makes it dangerous." For a long moment, they stood in silence, the sound of the rain filling the space between them. Then, as if something unseen pulled him forward, Ethan reached out and tucked a strand of her hair behind her ear. "You should not look at me that way," he said softly. "Why not?" she whispered. "Because I might forget this is pretend." The air thickened with unspoken feeling. Lily took a step back, her pulse quickening. "Then do not forget," she said, forcing a small smile. "It is safer that way." But as she turned to leave, Ethan caught her wrist gently. "Lily," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "whatever this is, I do not think it is fake anymore." She looked up at him, and for the first time since they met, she could not find a line between the act and the truth. The music from inside drifted through the open balcony doors, a slow jazz melody that carried the ache of something inevitable. Ethan released her hand reluctantly, and she walked away, disappearing into the glow of the city lights. That night, neither of them slept. In different corners of the same penthouse, they lay awake, haunted by the same thought: the contract had rules, but their hearts were no longer following them. The next morning, the city was blanketed in fog. The usual rhythm of Ethan's apartment, the quiet clatter of dishes, the hum of his phone calls, felt heavier, slower. Lily stood by the kitchen counter, hands wrapped around a mug of coffee, watching the clouds roll past the glass walls. Ethan entered the room, jacket in hand, tie slightly undone, looking like he had not slept at all. "Morning," he said softly. "Did you sleep?" she asked. "Not really," he admitted, pouring himself a cup. The silence stretched between them, filled only by the sound of the rain outside. "We still have the investor brunch at noon," she reminded him. "I know," he said. "And my mother will be there too." He tried to sound detached, but there was a tension in his voice that betrayed him. "You do not have to come if you do not want to." Lily looked up. "That is not part of the contract." "Maybe I am trying to change the contract," he said. The words hung in the air, uncertain and real. She smiled faintly, trying to deflect. "You really do not like rules, do you?" "I like the right ones," he replied. "The ones that make sense." They drove through the city in near silence. The event was held at a private rooftop garden overlooking the harbor. Everything gleamed: white linen, silver cutlery, the low murmur of polite laughter. Ethan's mother was already there, surrounded by board members and their spouses. When she saw them, her smile did not reach her eyes. "Ethan," she said, kissing him on the cheek. "Lily." Her tone softened slightly. "You look lovely." "Thank you," Lily said politely. The brunch went smoothly at first. They moved from table to table, answering questions, laughing when appropriate. But as the afternoon wore on, Lily noticed the tension building in Ethan's posture. One of the board members, a sharp-faced man named Richard Hall, leaned forward. "Mr. Cole, forgive me, but some of us are concerned about recent press. A fake engagement, even rumored, can damage credibility." Ethan's jaw tightened. "It is not fake," he said evenly. "And my personal life does not affect this company's performance." "Perhaps," Richard said, smirking. "But stability matters. Investors need reassurance." Before Ethan could respond, Lily placed her hand gently on his arm. "If you want reassurance," she said calmly, "look at the man who rebuilt this company from loss. Look at the man who shows up even when people question him. If that is not stability, I do not know what is." The table fell silent. Richard looked caught off guard, muttered something under his breath, and turned away. Ethan stared at her, something shifting behind his eyes. When the brunch ended, Margaret approached Lily privately. "You defended him well," she said. "You really believe in my son, do you not?" "I do," Lily said simply. "Because he is worth believing in." For a moment, the older woman's composure softened. "Then do not hurt him," she said quietly. "He has been hurt enough." Later that evening, Ethan stood on the balcony, the wind tugging at his tie. Lily joined him, holding 2 cups of coffee. "You did not have to do that today," he said without turning. "Defend me like that." "Yes, I did," she said. "Because I meant it." He looked at her then, his expression unreadable. "You make things complicated." "Maybe complicated is what you needed," she replied. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The city below shimmered with light, and the world seemed to shrink to the small space between them. "Lily," he said finally, his voice low, "do you ever think about what happens after this week ends?" She hesitated. "Every day." He took a step closer. "And what do you see?" Her heart pounded. "I see you," she said softly. "But I also see the line we are not supposed to cross." Ethan reached out, his hand brushing hers. "Maybe it is time we crossed it." The sound of thunder rolled in the distance as the first drops of rain began to fall again, the same way it had on the day they met. Only this time, neither of them moved away. The next morning arrived with chaos. Ethan's phone buzzed non-stop, and the sharp tone in his assistant's voice told Lily that something had gone terribly wrong. From the living room, she could hear him pacing. "What do you mean leaked?" he said, his voice cutting through the quiet. "Who sent it?" He hung up, exhaling hard. When he turned, his face was pale. "The contract," he said. "Someone leaked it to the press." Lily froze. "What contract?" "Ours," he said quietly. "Every clause, every signature. It is everywhere now." Within hours, headlines flooded the internet: fake fiancé scandal, Cole's love contract exposed. The phone would not stop ringing. Lily stared at the screen as notifications piled up, messages from strangers, reporters, even friends from her old neighborhood. "Ethan," she whispered, "they are calling me a gold digger." He clenched his fists. "I will handle it." "How?" she asked, her voice trembling. "You cannot take this back." Before he could respond, the doorbell rang. It was Margaret. She looked furious. "I warned you," she said coldly. "I told you this charade would end in disaster." "Mother, please," Ethan began, but she cut him off. "Your father built this name on integrity, and now you have turned it into gossip." Lily's eyes burned. "This was never supposed to happen," she said. "I never wanted this." "Then why sign the deal?" Margaret snapped. "For the money?" Ethan's voice rose. "Enough." His mother turned to him, eyes filled with disappointment. "Fix this, Ethan, before there is nothing left to fix." She left without another word. The silence she left behind was deafening. Lily backed away, shaking her head. "She is right. This was a mistake." "Do not say that," Ethan said quickly. "You did nothing wrong." "I lied, Ethan. Every time someone looked at us, I pretended. Maybe at first it was just acting, but then I started believing it, and that is the worst lie of all." Tears welled in her eyes. "You have your company to save. You do not need me dragging you down." He took a step closer, desperate. "Lily, please. Do not walk away." She looked at him, her heart breaking. "This was supposed to last 1 week," she said. "But somehow, it became the best and worst part of my life." Without another word, she turned and left the penthouse. Outside, flashes from paparazzi cameras blinded her as questions flew through the air. "Miss Tran, was it all fake? How much did he pay you?" She pushed through the crowd, her breath catching, rain soaking her hair as she disappeared into the city streets. Back inside, Ethan stood alone in the quiet apartment, the echo of the slammed door cutting through the sound of the storm. He sank into the nearest chair, his head in his hands, the words she had left behind replaying in his mind. For the first time in years, the man who controlled everything could not control the one thing that mattered most. For 2 days, the city could not stop talking. Every network, every headline repeated the same story: Ethan Cole, the billionaire who had faked an engagement. Lily stayed hidden in her small apartment, blinds drawn, her phone turned face down. The world outside had turned cruel, but the silence inside hurt more. Meanwhile, Ethan was in his office, refusing interviews, canceling meetings, and working without sleep. His board demanded answers. Investors threatened to pull out. Yet, all he could think about was the look in Lily's eyes when she said goodbye. By the 3rd day, he made a decision. If he was going to lose everything, he would at least tell the truth himself. That night, at the company's charity gala, reporters filled the grand hall, expecting an apology, a statement, or maybe a resignation. When Ethan took the stage, the room went silent. He looked exhausted but steady, his voice calm and clear. "Good evening," he began. "You have all read the headlines." "Yes, the contract was real. I wrote it. I asked Lily Tran to pretend to be my fiancé, but what you do not know is why." Cameras clicked furiously. He continued, "For years, I have lived behind my company's name, chasing numbers and approval. When my father died, I promised myself I would never show weakness again. Then I met Lily. She was the first person in years who spoke to me like I was not a brand, not a name, just a man. The contract was mine. The mistake was mine. But the love that was hers." Gasps spread through the audience. "She believed in me before anyone else did," he said, "and if that makes me a fool, then I will take that title proudly." He stepped down from the podium, ignoring the questions shouted after him. Outside the hall, Lily stood in the rain, having watched the speech through her phone's live stream. Her heart pounded as she saw him walk into the downpour, searching the crowd. "Lily," he called, his voice carrying over the thunder. She turned slowly, raindrops running down her cheeks like tears. "Why did you do that?" she asked when he reached her. "Because I was tired of pretending," he said. "Because you deserved the truth." "You ruined your reputation," she said, her voice breaking. "I ruined nothing," he replied softly. "I just found out what mattered." For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Ethan reached into his coat and pulled out a small white coffee cup, the same one from the day they met. "You gave me the wrong coffee," he said with a trembling smile. "And it turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me." Lily laughed through her tears. "You are impossible." "Maybe," he said. "But I am yours, if you will have me." She hesitated, then stepped forward, her hands trembling as they reached for his. The rain fell harder, but neither of them cared. Around them, the city lights blurred, and for the first time since the story began, everything felt real. In that moment, the wrong coffee, the wrong contract, every mistake had led them exactly where they were meant to be. A year later, the world had moved on from the scandal, but for Ethan and Lily, everything had changed. The sun filtered softly through the windows of a quiet corner cafe on the edge of the city. The sign above the door read, "Promise Blend," painted in gold against dark wood. Inside, the air smelled of coffee beans and fresh pastries, and laughter drifted gently between tables. Lily wiped her hands on an apron and glanced across the room. Ethan was sitting by the window, sleeves rolled up, reading through a pile of design sketches. "You still work too much," she teased, setting a cup of espresso in front of him. "Occupational habit," he said, smiling. "And you still make the wrong coffee." She raised an eyebrow. "You love it." "I love you more," he said without hesitation. The words rolled off his tongue easily now, without fear or pretense. Their cafe had become a small refuge, a blend of her dream and his redemption. On the wall near the counter hung a framed white porcelain cup, the same one that had started it all. Beneath it, etched in soft gold letters, were the words "Wrong coffee, right forever." Customers often asked about the story behind it, and Lily would just smile and say, it was a very expensive mistake. Ethan watched her move around the cafe, the sunlight catching in her hair, and thought about how far they had come. He remembered the man he used to be, calculating, closed off, obsessed with success, and how a simple act of kindness had undone every wall he built. When the morning rush slowed, Lily joined him at the window. Outside, the city moved in its usual rhythm, unaware of the quiet miracle unfolding inside. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked. "The meetings, the power, the noise?" He shook his head. "Not for a second. For the first time, I know what peace feels like." She leaned her head on his shoulder. So, what is next for us? He turned to her, his smile tender. Forever, he said. No contracts. No pretending. Just forever. The small bell above the café door chimed as new customers walked in, and Lily stood to greet them. Ethan watched her for a moment before returning to his sketches, a quiet contentment in his chest. The world outside still chased perfection, but he had found something better: truth. As the camera of life panned out, the last image was simple: two hands reaching across a table, a cup of coffee between them, steam curling upward like a promise kept. And just before the screen faded to black, her voice echoed softly, the same words that had changed everything. Sometimes, the wrong order brings you exactly what you need.